Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soul Seekers podcast, where we believe that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure as we share our mission of mentorship is conservation. To learn more about everything we do, check out our show on Carbon TV or go to soulseekersnation.com. Freedom on, everybody, and stay soulful. Do you want to become a better shooter, reduce flinch, protect your ears, and just overall enjoy shooting your gun that much more? Then there's no better way to do that than by adding a suppressor to the end of your barrel. Be sure to check out Huxwrx Safety Co, as they are a leader in the suppressor world with their OSS Flow-Through Technology, virtually eliminating blowback and toxic gas that can affect weapon system performance and shooter health. To find out more about Huxwrx, go to huxwrx.com. That's huxwrx.com, and go get yourself a suppressor for your upcoming hunts. This podcast is also proudly brought to you by OnX Hunt. When I first got into hunting, I kept hearing all about public land and different access and how to find different locations to hunt. I was like, well, how are people even identifying all this stuff? Well, sure enough, I came across the number one hunting GPS app, and that is OnX Hunt. If you guys want to get better at hunting and go deeper into your scouting, OnX Hunt is the number one GPS app for that. Join the millions of hunters who trust OnX Hunt to find more game, discover new access, and hunt smarter. It was a game changer for me, and I know it's going to be a game changer for you if you've never used it. If you have used it, you know the power that it holds. Guys, I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you want to know more about OnX, go to onxmaps.com/hunt. And check out their app. Be blessed, freedom on, and stay soulful. If you're in the market for optics, I want you to go check out blackdiamondoptics.com. Black Diamond Optics offers world-class sporting and tactical optics, including thermals, all at wholesale pricing, direct to consumer. They are going to be partnering up with us for 2023, and I want to start pointing you over towards their direction. Check out Black Diamond Optics. If you've got any questions about it, shoot us a message. Love to hear from you. Be blessed, everybody. All right, guys, if you're looking for a better way to stay hydrated this coming hunting season and on all your adventures in the future, go check out hardsidehydration.com. Their swig rig is awesome, an absolute game changer when it comes to staying hydrated. I get tired of playing around with any water bladders in my bag and having to remove things to get to them and the chance of them puncturing and all that. So what Hardside did, take Nalgene's, got multiple sizes, and you're attaching your hose straight to that. Keep it on the outside of your pack, a lot easier to use. They also have a lot of other cool things. Go check out hardsidehydration.com. Use the code SOULSEEKERS10. That's all one word. Save yourself 10% at checkout. Hope you guys enjoy this podcast. Be blessed. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seekers podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack, and today I am joined by one of my best friends in the outdoor world. He has dressed up as Santa Claus on hunts. He has gone out and won world championships in coyote calling, and he is the only man known in the world to hold a world championship elk calling championship and a coyote championship at the exact same time. Without further ado, the man himself, the legend, Mr. Fox Pro, Big Al Morris is here for a podcast tonight. Big Al, what's up, brother? How you doing?
How are you, Johnny Mac?
I'm doing great. Every time I get to be in community with you, man, it just lights me up like the 4th of July, being with another freedom-loving individual.
You know, it's just one of those things. Like-minded people find like-minded people, and we hang out. And the more we hang out, the more fun we have. And it's just, and that's why hopefully people tune into your podcasts and whatnot to learn a little bit about how they can have a little more fun in the outdoors, like Johnny Mac does and Al Morris does.
That's right. If you ain't having fun, what's the point, right?
Well, and if you don't get excited, I guess it's time to quit. So I get excited just talking about it, and I'm usually a little more animated. But as I related to you a little earlier, Johnny, this is the 5th kidney stone I've given birth to in the last 2 weeks. So for some reason, God wanted me to experience a whole bunch of kidney stones. And in August of this year.
I am so sorry to hear that. I want to say I feel your pain, but I have no idea what it's like.
You don't want to know. Stay hydrated. That's all I
Yeah.
say.
Is that what it is, really, like a lack of hydration?
No, I don't know. I mean, I don't drink a lot of milk, but they're calcium based, and for whatever reason, I'm just building a lot of kidney stones right now, and so I've got to figure out any of those holistic people. Send Johnny a message; he'll pass it on. How do I keep from building these calcium stones in my body?
It was horrible.
So,
Like, I called you about a month ago planning this podcast, and you answered, and I was checking in, and something in the spirit just wasn't sitting with me right because you weren't your big jovial self. Like,
there's no animation when you're in pain, brother.
I was like, "Are you doing okay?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm good." I'm like, "Are you sure?" And it wasn't. But a couple days later on social media, there was some you take too much sand to the beach, brother. You got to leave that at home.
That one looked like a goat head sticker. Now, what you're not supposed to pass an 8 to 10 millimeter goat head. You know, the 3s and 5s are no big deal, but that 8 to 10 it tested me.
Yeah, and all you listeners, I didn't know what a goat head was until I moved to Texas. I found out really quick, really
Nice.
quick. Horrible.
So what are we
things.
talking about, Johnny? What do you want to learn tonight?
Man, I want to learn elk hunting more. You, my man, what was it last year? You said you stuck an arrow in an elk, or you were a part of an arrow going in an elk for like number 256. What number?
First, that's first time archers. Um, I'm over 250 first time archers have shot an elk with me, and I've had my knife in last year's count. Best I can tell through all my journals since I was 16, I'm at 796. I got 4 elk to go, and I'll be at 800.
Oh my gosh, man!
So I've kept a journal since 1983, and I mean, there's a couple of journals got lost through a divorce and stuff like that, but I've kept a pretty good number over the last few years, and there's only 1 or 2 other guys on the planet can say they put their knife in that many elk, and both of them work for me at Three Forks Ranch. So Dan Whitmus is up there, and Al Schneider is up there, and those boys they've probably exceeded 800 elk now because they take so many public hunters every year. Those boys they're averaging 100, 150 elk a year putting their knives in. So when I was working there managing that place, in 1 year alone, I put my knife in 223 elk.
Wow,
So yeah,
wow. You better have a good knife at that point.
you definitely you learn how to keep one sharp very fast. You don't sit there with a Lansky for 30 minutes. You got to figure out a fast sharp
Yep,
knife.
yep. I can
So
only imagine. Let me ask you this real quick: You've killed or been a part of that many elk. Um, Is that because there are so many in Utah, or you've just perfected, or you've come to understand the game
no,
that
I
well?
mean the ranch I managed in Colorado, we'd have 5,000 to 6,000 elk on 50,000 acres, and I would keep those elk there. The way I hunted them, I hunted early and hunted late. You start hunting public land, there's guys hunting them all day, 24/7, 365, seasons open. And if you'll let a cow elk lay down, nurse her babies, and chew her cud, she'll stay. If you bump her when she's trying to nurse her babies, chew her cud, or bed for the midday, and you bump her, those elk they can change zip codes trying to find a place that they will not get harassed. So being on private land is a huge advantage over being on public land. And last year I got it at R&K, Wyoming, Queen Mountain Lodge. I'm going to help them a couple hunts this year. And Rob Massa runs that. Ted Kimball, him and Rob do a great job running that R&K. There's R&K Utah and there's R&K Wyoming, and they've kind of separated. And I help those guys at R&K Wyoming, Queen Mountain Lodge. In fact, if you just saw Ralph and Vicky, the Archer's Choice, they were there last year, and RJ, Ralph's son, killed a bull, and we had Ralph. And that's honestly, if somebody wanted to look up a great episode of true elk hunting, RJ killed a nice 5x6 bull, and me and another guide, we guided Ralph for the 4 or 5 days he was there, and it was tough. Those elk were walking away from us, and it's like anything else. There's days fish don't bite, there's days coyotes won't call, and there's days elk won't call. but we can take these diaphragms, and I showed you that earlier, but that's that Fox Pro diaphragm, and we can take these diaphragms, we can take some of these externals, and I've learned coyotes, I'm not really sure what they're saying all the time. I can't really tell you the language of a coyote. There was a lady, they had a bunch of elk in a pen in Oregon, and they'd have 30 cows, and they would put in 5 bulls. And the first year they put in spikes, and the next year they put in 4 points and 5, and then they did 5, year and a half old bulls, 2.5-year-old bulls, 3.5-year-old bulls with these cows. And they found out the older, mature bulls could cover all 30 of those cows in about 10 days in September, where the young spikes, they were breeding clear into October. So they noticed with the older, more mature bulls, the rut was condensed. And so that's why you have these managers across the West, and even in Pennsylvania and these places, they want these older, mature bulls doing the breeding because it condenses the rut and they get a higher percentage of cows pregnant. But in that same compound, they put in about 30 coyotes, and a lady put up speakers all around them. And they said there's 11 to 13 vocalizations coyotes make. I don't know how many vocalizations elk make. All I know is they're the most vocal animals on the planet. From the time that calf's born, for 2 weeks, that calf lays there and waits for mom to come, and it'll stand up and feed. And anyway, but once those calves start following their mama, they start talking every day. And so you take these diaphragms, you take these external calls, and we'll talk about these external calls I've got. But when you can truly start talking to elk, if I can hear a bull bugle, I can tell you what's on his mind. I can tell you when a bull's going to come to my calling, and I can tell you when a bull's just bugling to bugle. And I don't know how to explain that other than I'm 57. I just turned 57, August 13th. I was 16 years old in 1983 when I read an article that Rich LaRocco wrote about Wayne Carlton taking a turkey diaphragm. And that's what's awesome about these diaphragms is they still. But the first animals, when I first learned to do this, we went to the Book Cliffs of eastern Utah, and I started doing this. And the first thing I called in was 7 pups and 2 adult coyotes. I called in 9 coyotes the first time I ever really put a diaphragm call in my mouth. But the next day, my buddy Rich shot a big 6x6 bull there that I called up. So I found out that not only could I call turkeys with the turkey diaphragm, we can call elk with this diaphragm, and we can call coyotes. And that really changed my life. Wayne Carlton took 5 minutes on the phone and changed my life, teaching me how to use a diaphragm. And so now I'm 57. This will be my 40th year with a diaphragm in my mouth. 40 years of elk calling, 796 elk that I've had a knife in. I just count an elk, even if it's a cow hunt, late season cow hunt. If I can get that elk to stop and we get a standing broadside shot, I count that elk as a called elk. So that's how I got to my number, 796. And there's not many guys. There's a lot of guys in the elk world that say they're professionals, say they're badasses, but they can't touch 796 elk.
You're a stud. Hey, by the way, happy birthday, and I apologize for not saying that earlier on, man. That's quite an accomplishment. Way to go. Hopefully you weren't too laid up on your birthday in that regard.
No, I had a great birthday. I passed stones about 7-8 days ago. I passed 3 stones in a week there, and then the day after my birthday, I passed 2 more stones. It's on my Instagram. You can look that up if you can see my Instagram. We tried to go Instagram live.
Yeah, all you guys listen to this podcast, this was supposed to be an Instagram live episode that we were going to share as a podcast and allow you to ask questions and interact a little bit more. Unfortunately, there was some technical difficulty. So we're recording here right now, and you're just getting the audio version. I do apologize, but life goes on. So, Big Al, can I play out some scenarios that I experienced this last year on an elk hunt and then have you talk me through a couple things?
Absolutely.
Okay, so morning or getting in, I flew into the state of Washington. It was my last year having a residency tag, and I drew a bull elk tag for Eastern Washington. So I had high hopes and high expectations of getting on a branch antlered animal, because regular season in that unit, it's cow only, and you have to special draw for a spike. So I was sitting with a branch antlered quality tag in my pocket, and I was like, "Oh baby, here we go." So I'm driving up into the mountains at night. I actually just had a giant 6x6 cross in front of the road on us, and I was like, "Oh man, dude, we are in the elk. It's gonna be awesome." And
Tell me the date.
ooh, I'm gonna have to pull this up. It was
I need
Sept.
the exact dates. I can tell you what's happening with the rut just by the date.
Really?
But every year fluctuates. It can be 2 weeks different one way or the other.
All right. So this was September 17th.
So that is the money best week, bar none. Okay, so before you get to your scenario, let's preface this. So bulls will start. What's the date today? August 15th?
Today is the 14th.
14th.
15th? It's the 15th. Yes, it's the 15th. You should know this.
Today's
It was
the
your
15th.
birthday 2 days ago, huh?
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying. So all big bulls rub from about August 5th to August 25th. There's about 20 days there that all bull elk will rub the velvet off their horns.
Okay.
Now, what happens? What makes a bull elk's velvet rub?
Testosterone.
The amount of sunlight that reaches their eye. As the
okay.
days get shorter, less sunlight reaches their eye. It triggers those bulls. So that blood flow is going up into that velvet, right? All of a sudden, that less sunlight triggered through their eye triggers their testicles to release all the testosterone they've been storing since October of last year. All that testosterone that's been storing in their testicles releases it at various times, and it goes up. And the first thing it does is plug that flow of blood into the velvet, and so it triggers that velvet. That testosterone plugs the blood flow. The velvet. Have you had a scar that gets itchy when it starts to dry? A scab on your arm gets itchy.
Yep.
They say that's the same sensation an elk feels when that blood gets cut off. The nerves die in that velvet. Up until then, you'll see those bucks and bulls. They don't want to touch that velvet on anything. And then all of a sudden that testosterone releases, plugs it up. The nerve endings die in that velvet, and it gets itchy. And that's when they start rubbing the trees and rub their velvet.
What's up, Soul Seekers Nation? Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I really appreciate it. As a reward, I have some discount codes for you to use if you are in the market for a brand new hunting pack. Go check out initialascent.com and Initial Ascent packs. They are made in America. Their one-piece carbon frame is an absolute game changer. We run their packs. We love them. And you can save 5% at checkout by using the code SOULSEEKERS. That's all one word. Also, for those of you who are archery hunters and you are tired of shooting at dots on a target, check out deadnutsoutdoors.com for their lifelike 2D archery targets. You can save 20% on all of their products by using the code SOULSEEKERS at checkout. Once again, the code is SOULSEEKERS, all one word. Go check out initialascent.com and Dead Nuts Outdoors. Enjoy the podcast. Okay.
But all those big bulls go through what I call the 7-day sulks. There's about a week. That testosterone is coursing. They haven't had any testosterone all year long. And all of a sudden, August 15th, boom, they get this dump of testosterone. And they just, man, I thought this bull, I walked up on him about August 20th one year, big 6x6 bull, bloody rags hanging off his horns, stark white horns. Bloody velvet hanging, and he's sitting there shaking, and I go, oh, it's my first chronic wasting disease that I've ever seen in person. I stepped on a twig. That bull snapped, looked at me, and he wasn't sick at all. He just was sitting there shaking from all that testosterone. Of course, and when I told the biologist about it, he laughed, and he said all that testosterone really has him amped up. So after 7 days, last week of August, first week of September, those bulls are ready to go. They're ready to breed. They're ready to go. The problem is the cows aren't ready. The cows, they're triggered estrus by the amount of sunlight in their eyes. The last week of August, there's only 1% of the cow elk in estrus. The first week of September, there's only about 3 to 4% of the cows in estrus. By the 15th of September, 30 to 40% of those cows will come into estrus within a 5-day period of the 15th. So all these cows come into estrus around the 15th. What you have prior to that, the first week of September, the little bulls, the 5x5s, the 4x5s, they know something's going on. They can smell these cows coming into estrus, and and the cows want to be together. Those cows have been pretty much solitary till July. And then July, they'll get those big groups of cows that I call them the nursery herds. There'll be 50, 60 calves. There'll be 60, 70 cow elk, and they'll all be hanging together. And then they just kind of hang together and go into the rut, and those big bulls are hanging around the edges of those. They'll be within a mile or two of those big groups of cows, but those big bulls will not set in until they know 50, 60% of those cows are in heat. That happens that 15th to the 20th. That's when the big bulls set in, the little bulls get kicked out, and it should be great calling. Now, the only disadvantage to that September calling and that time of year can be hot, dry winds and not much moisture or clouds. The more cloud cover, the darker the clouds, the more rain that you get end of August, the monsoonal moisture. You'll get some cloudy September days, even some snow on around that 15th of September. That can trigger a rut too. But that'll trigger them to come into estrus sooner. It'll trigger those bulls to start grouping up. So your hunt was the 17th of September. Tell me what happened.
So pull in, it was a starry night. It was clear nights when we get there, and you can hear elk bugling off in the distance throughout the night. It was like I've shot a beautiful 6x6 bull before, but when I was in the elk woods that time, they were silent. This was the first time that I experienced like elk really bugling out in the wild, and you can hear them, and
But it was during the night.
So,
what was your moon phase?
We ended up having, I'm pretty sure
was it a quarter moon? Was it a half moon?
I think. See, here's the thing. I want to make note. You take notes of all this stuff.
Yes.
Okay, so before I even get into elk story, you take note of all this because it just adds to your, information.
Approach.
Okay.
No, it's how I approach them.
Okay.
If they're going all night long, you've got to be there at first light. You've got to strike while the iron's hot at first light, or you've got to be there right at dark and catch them moving. Now, there can be, if you dare go in the bedding areas, that 10 to 2 is probably, if it's a full moon or very bright moon and they're rutting at night, your best odds of killing a bull on public land is 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. But you've got to go into their beds and you've got to get right in their grill.
Dude, this is cracking me up because you're giving away my story there, big dog.
We haven't talked about your story, have we?
No, we haven't, but you are nailing it. Okay, so I'm pulling up photos of that hunt, and I had a starry sky every night. The moon, there was not much. I don't know if that's a star or a moon. It had to have been like a half a moon. Let's just say,
half.
Yeah.
I was just guessing.
Okay, so
because that gives them plenty. Did you know a half moon they can see like it's daylight at night? An elk.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Dude, I'm going to be sharing some stories tonight. This is going to be fun. So I get up. I'm hearing bugles all night. Get up early. We got a plan. We get out before dark or before sunrise is all this stuff. Don't hear a thing, you know.
They rutted all night long.
All night long. And so I was like, okay, well, let's play the game. We've done digital scouting. We've used the Onyx, gone through this process. And I hear a bugle off in the distance. I end up playing this game, and I'm pretty sure it was a hunter.
Okay.
Reason that I believe that it is a hunter, number one, is because as we're bugling back and forth and you can hear it closing the distance, we're getting closer to each other, all of a sudden I heard a cow call. And I was like, that is a strategy that I would be doing once I'm
Right.
in the kill zone, like now I'm going to let out a cow call and bring him in closer.
Once I put some pressure on him. Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's the first part of my hunt. Is that a strategy that you also use? You're bugling back and forth, and then once you are within a certain distance, you're cow calling only and strictly from that point? Or
Johnny, when I start calling bulls, okay, I know I've said this before to you, but calling elk is like a bar scene, right? You got the guys that walk in the $200 silk shirts. They're there to impress the ladies, right?
uh-huh.
And then you got the guys that come in the wife beaters. They still got blood stains from last week when they beat the guys up in the $200 silk shirts. And then you got the guy in the corner that's just sitting there sipping his beer by himself. He wants to watch the guys in the wife beaters beat up the guys in the silk shirts. So when you're calling elk, if you get an elk to bugle and he's bugling back at your bugles, you probably ought to stick with the bugles. If they won't talk to you when they're bugling, but they will call to you when you cow call. When you cow call and he bugles, you better stick with the cow calls. And then the satellite bulls, they may come to a combination of all of that because they're just there. They're just like the guy in the corner sipping on a beer. They know something's going on. They want to be part of it. Now, when those big bulls set into the herd around that 15th to 20th, September, they kick all those little bulls off the herd. So they'll be in the fringe. And man, that should be an awesome week to call. But barometric pressure, temperature, moon phase, and it's mostly windy, hot afternoons. Elk they can't hear when the wind's blowing, so they just shut down. Why would they do that when they know tonight's going to be bright, crystal clear, no wind? They can rut in the cooler temperatures, and they know you're not going to be out there harassing them in the dark.
Okay. So this is great. So I get in on what I think is a bull. Turns out like it was a bedding area. There was rubs all over the place.
Beds everywhere.
Just elk beds everywhere. And I'm like, okay, well, this is a great spot. We end up backing out of there, and we're going on a hunt, all this. By the way, you can catch this episode. A shout out for Carbon TV. Number one, you're in Fox Pro is for best small game on Carbon TV.
Small game. Your best open.
Yes. So we got to make sure that we pump up our shows and give the love.
Vote for best open. Soul Seekers.
Yep. And for small game, Fox Pro. So I will say I just dropped this episode of this hunt that we're talking about today on Carbon TV. So this just went live. You can see kind of what.
Well, as soon as we get done talking, I'm going to go watch it.
Perfect. Okay, so we back out. We're learning the mountain. It's the first time I have ever gotten to be there because I had to fly in for this hunt. All this stuff, and then we're seeing sign, never catch up to elk. And I will say I regret the hunt in this regard because I learned. I was more like, oh, let's go hiking and try to find them. But there was a road system, and I feel like I did myself a disservice of just burning calories and boot leather rather than hopping in a car and just driving and calling drainages.
And finding where the concentrations of elk are, and then you burn the boot leather when you know that there's multiple opportunities in a canyon.
Okay. So
that's
so I totally just rookied out on this hunt, man. So once we go through the process, and Iron Will, you got to meet him down. He shot his very first buck day one. After we backed out of that canyon, we ran into a mule deer herd, and he shot a beautiful buck. Stuck it at 65 yards. Just
excellent.
I was like, yeah, buddy. So that's on film. You get to see that in the episode.
That's out west.
So as we progress, he had to leave the next day, and we found wallows. We found sign. We never saw the elk, never got responses of calls, and at night they went silent.
Wow.
They shut down. So what is your take on that? It's kind of
was there a ton of pressure? Were they feeling pressure?
Yes.
that's the only reason elk shut down. It's either pressure from humans or pressure from wolves, and they will go silent. They know that if they open their mouths, somebody or a wolf will show right up. And in that case, you might be dealing with both people and wolves.
Yep.
So you just don't know.
Okay. So when they're going silent and they're not speaking at all, what do you do?
Water. You've got to hunt the wallows. You've got to hunt the water where they're going to, a bull elk, when he gets that heated, he is going to go to water. He's going to go to a wallow. That September 15th, even the 10th, September 10th to October 10th, those bulls will visit a wallow once a week at least. So they got to cool down, and they've got to drink. Elk have to drink every day that time of year.
So
you've got to find that, number one, find that concentration of elk and find that water and those wallows. But those elk, they don't need water to make a wallow. They'll make a dry wallow up on the ridges. They'll just dig dirt. They'll dig these big, looks like a big scrape, a big whitetail scrape, just 3 times as big. They'll pee in the middle of it, and that's what they roll in. So they don't need water to make a wallow. They can do a dry wallow too.
So if you're sitting on a wet wallow and the elk are silent, are you literally just sitting waiting then? Or are you calling near that wallow?
You have to. No, see, now here's the difference. I've been so successful calling elk that I would rather eat my tag and call every 30 minutes to an hour than to sit there and just sit there like a whitetail. Anybody can get in a tree stand and shoot an elk. Anybody. If you put a tree stand next to a wallow, eventually you should shoot that elk. But I don't count that elk. That elk doesn't mean anything to me. I don't care if he's 400 inches. I would rather take a 280 that I called in screaming at me and shoot him at 27 yards. And I'll give you my last year. I had a Randy Zerwig from Georgia comes to Wyoming. And here's the deal. Randy says, I'm not shooting over 30 yards. And I'm like, okay, most bows will shoot 60 to 100, but if your limit's 30 yards, and he goes, do you remember what bow? Johnny, you're too young. You won't know which bow company had the safari cams on them. Do you remember the safari cam?
Nope.
High Country in the mid 1980s came out with a bow with a carbon type limb with the safari cams. And he bought that bow in 1983 or 85. And that's the bow he brought to Wyoming last year in 2022. And he has killed a pile of deer his whole life. He has killed whitetails from Missouri to Georgia. And the farthest shot's 15, 20 yards. And that bow kills him dead every time. So he knew that bow would kill an elk. He just told me I'd have to get it close. And we hunted hard for 3 or 4 days. It's similar stuff. Elk going ballistic at night. You had to be there early in the morning, and I tried to catch them transitioning from their feeding. And most elk will have a feeding area and a bedding area. And then they have the transition between those two areas. And it's the transition areas where you will catch those satellite bulls that are trying to keep up with the herds as they go from the feeding areas to the bedding areas.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening to this episode. As a thank you, I got more discount codes for all of you. If you are in the market for anything in regards to calls, whether it's elk calls, turkey calls, deer, or predator calls, you can save 15% on all Rocky Mountain hunting calls by using the code SOULSEEKERS. That's all one word. And if you're in the market for hard side hydration, a better way to hydrate, go check out hardsidehydration.com. Use the code SOULSEEKERS10 to save 10%. And we also have a discount at Graxaw.com. Graxaw is the leader in ultralight game bags and other backcountry gear. Light, fast, and efficient is their motto. Use the code SOULSEEKERS, all one word, to save 10% at checkout.
I won't hunt them in their beds unless I absolutely have to. I want to hunt them on the edge of their feeding areas and the transition areas from their feeding to their bedding areas. And it's that transition when the herd is moving and those bulls and cows will be talking. The cows will be talking to their calves. The bulls will be talking to the cows. And the little bulls will, and the satellite, I say little bulls, some of those satellite bulls are as big as the herd bulls. And I try to catch them. And long story short, it took us 3 or 4 days, but I got to calling and I had a bull. He just gave me that bugle that told me. I looked at Randy and I looked at his brother, Mark Zerwig, and I said, you guys set up right here. And I ran 20, 30 yards as fast as I could run. I finally did a small bull bugle, and I'm going to demonstrate this for you, Johnny. I did a small bull bugle into a cow elk in estrus, and this bull ran up 11 steps from Randy Zerwig, and he's high 1985 high country with the safari cams, and he stuck that bull perfect at 11 steps. Now, that is a perfect elk hunt, but it just doesn't work that way unless you put yourself in that transition as you catch them from transitioning. Now, if they are silent and they will not talk to you, can you kill a turkey when they won't gobble back at you? Or the hens won't? I can't kill a turkey if they don't talk to me. I can't kill a coyote if I don't. I mean, a few coyotes. I kill quite a few coyotes that don't let me know they're there. They just show up. But that's rare. Normally, I know there's coyotes there, and I've done my homework. I found those coyotes. Like you said, you hamstrung yourself by not driving those roads and finding more concentrations of elk. You were burning calories in boot leather trying to find the elk. The good elk hunters, and I'm just going to let this out there, the good elk hunters spend all their time hunting elk. They don't spend all their time looking for elk. That's the difference between the guys that kill elk and the guys that hunt elk. So that's the biggest nugget I can give. An elk hunter spends all his time hunting elk, not finding them. Finding them, the boot leather needs to be spent in August right now, finding the concentrations of cows. But even then, they can move 20 miles to the best feed and the best water for the rut condition. But years of experience, I can look on an onX. I can find those drainages. I can see where an elk wants. They're going to have north-facing slopes. They're going to have the areas they can get in the shade, but it's going to be in proximity to ponds, wallows, and water streams. And that's where, and I'm going to catch those elk in transition, and I'm going to use these calls.
Okay, so let's move on with the story because we're paralleling very well right now. This is awesome. Is great. So after I'm like, all right, I'm tired of hiking. I'm tired of all this. We've already packed out a mule deer. Like, things are good, but we're not covering miles and miles and miles. We're covering a few drainages. And I think that is where, I know that's where I screwed up. Like I really wasted my time on this hunt. I would love to go back and do it again because we ended up running into some hunters, and these hunters who they were like, man, you guys are hiking around. We're driving, and we're just ripping bugles off the side of the road, This guy, he said, now, Big Al, I want to say this is no fishtail. There's a high density of cougar in Washington and in this unit. And he said he saw 3 different cougars in 2 days hunting these elk. And 2 of the 3 were out and jumped out onto elk in front of him. He goes, it ruined his hunt. He was about to shoot a bull, and then all of a sudden this cougar just jumped out of the tree.
No, I said wolves, but cougars, the black bears, the wolves, and the humans are all, hey, I didn't get this way eating salad. I got this way eating elk. And so everything likes a good elk steak. That's just no lie.
Okay, so everything inside of me, maybe I was too prideful. I think really was what it comes down to. Prideful, ego, and inexperienced, where I was like, no, man, I want to put on my backpack and I want to just, go.
Make this an authentic backcountry elk hunt.
Yes.
Just like you watch on the Outdoor Channel.
Yes. Although you might not see the car on the Outdoor Channel. And I think that might be the catch of it all. So I run into these guys off the side of the road, and we talk, and we ended up running into them again, and that's when they shared with us their encounters and stories. Pretty fascinating. So my two-shot Tony and I, we go cruising. And we're like, dude, let's just find these roads. And at that time, we weren't even really bugling out the windows or whatever. We're just just driving. We're
Scouting.
a little frustrated, a little like, what's
Yep.
going on? And we pull up, and I look off in the distance in this little meadowy opening that was only like 500 yards from a camp. Like there was like a hunting camp. And there was this lone cow out in this field. And I was like, dude, it's an elk. It's September. Let's go play
There's
around
gonna be
with
a
it.
bull with her.
Yeah, there's got to be something. And so we're going out, and now this is towards evening. We had probably about a half hour before we couldn't see at all. And we just leave the truck in the middle of the road. Thank goodness no other trucks tried to come up by. And we hop out, and we start working, and we're filming the cow. And it's like, oh, man, this is cool. I didn't think to bugle because I'm just such a rookie, man. I hate to keep saying it, but I think, going back, and correct me if I'm wrong, I should have just ripped a bugle.
You should have done anything, a cow call or a bugle. Because if you want to call an elk in, the first thing you have to do is make calls.
Okay, very good. So I start cow calling at this cow because it's moving and it's spotting us, and I don't want to blow it out, and I'm just observing it. And so I start cow calling. It never responds.
Right.
But out of the distance,
a bull rips.
Huge. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's go time, but we're running out of daylight. And what ended up happening is this bull, which sounded like it was more down in a drainage to my left, ended up coming up high on the hill up above me, and there's nothing in between me and him. And so he stepped out at 100 yards, but beyond my range at that distance with the opening, and he was tall, not super wide, like those big.
Who cares?
Oh, dude, I know. I could care less, man. I'll shoot anything, man. I will say that was like, oh my gosh, I pretty much called in an elk right there. That was me.
Oh, yeah. No. I mean, I only count them if they're 40 yards or less, 50 yards or less maybe. But, it's okay. You can count that one because he did come to your calling. But did you know the cows are in as much competition to breed as the bulls?
No.
So if you can call those lead cows, the bulls think they're in charge. But at the end of the day, it's the lead cow decides where they feed, where they water, when they go to bed. The bulls will herd them around and act like they're in charge because they got the headgear to push them and stuff. But the cows are in as much competition to breed as the bulls. So if you can call the lead cow in, who is 15 to 20 years old, and then you've got a bull that's maybe 5 to 8, 10 years old, they should be a lot easier to call in than that 20, 25-year-old cow. But I've learned through the years that if I call every elk in, I'm going to get every elk in front of me. Now, the problem with calling every elk in is every elk has a set of eyes, every elk has a set of ears, and they all got noses. And man, will a group of elk smell you or see you really fast.
Yes.
If if the wind ain't right, so it causes you so much grief. But did you kill an elk on this trip?
We're going to get to that. So this is a fun story. I thank you so much because you are going through this play right here, and it's helping me understand, and hopefully the listeners are following along with this, and they could see themselves in these
situations.
First off, the wind was perfect for me. It just was, I would have had to run in open terrain at that elk to even get close enough to shoot, and that wasn't going to happen.
You know what I would have done?
No, tell me.
You know what I would have done? I would have put my butthead decoy up. Did you see the Pennsylvania Game Commission just released that draw? They got the Pennsylvania draw. That I guided the first archery elk hunter in modern times in Pennsylvania 4 years ago.
Really?
And they videoed it. And long story short, I was calling this bull in when a group of other guys came into the same food plot. They were just there to hear the elk and see the elk. So they start blowing their Primos calls, and they actually shut that bull down. And the bull left us. Well, then some coyotes started howling. So I start howling at the coyotes. Well, then the bull bugles again. It was like it reset him to hear the coyotes howling. And anyway, we get there and he's 80 yards. And Jim Lickfield, the guy that drew the tag, there was only like 10 archery tags given 4 years ago, and he drew one of them from New York, Buffalo, New York.
Yeah.
And I said, Jim, follow me. And this elk's sitting there bugling at us at 80 yards, but he won't come any closer because those other guys are bugling behind us 150, 200 yards. I picked up that butthead elk decoy from Native by Carlton, and I walked Jim to 48 yards, and Jim stuck him in the heart.
Really?
48 yards.
Okay. Now I'm just.
I walked up right to him with the decoy.
Now I'm just getting really angry hearing this. So my thought was, I didn't blow him out. He stepped out in the open, but didn't see what he was wanting to see.
For you.
Yes. And I felt like
if you'd had a decoy, he might have run to you.
Do you think at that point, like I hate to say, I went full retard in the moment of like, like, do I cow call? Do I bugle? Do I rake? What am I doing? Like,
Johnny, that is not the time to go JoJo Circus Boy. That's the time to calm down.
Right. So when you're in this type of scenario, I don't have a decoy to be able to go closer. And he stepped to the edge of where his safety net was and expected to see something, and he didn't.
Yep. Nope. Leave him. Back out. Leave him there. You know he's coming to the call. He'll come to the call the next morning.
Okay. So we didn't spook him, I don't think. He ended up just backing away and just walking into the timber. And we
don't say anything else. Just walk away, sneak away. Don't let him smell you. Don't let him see you.
Okay. So we're like, okay, we got a game plan. We just called in an elk. We're on elk, baby. It's not a human. We laid eyes on this. We're coming back here in the morning. We get there in the morning, and I let off a morning bugle, and I get a response.
Perfect.
But nothing shows up. Nothing is coming in. And so we start.
Did you know which drainage it came from?
So it was kind of on the top of a hill. Let's see here.
But you weren't sure what direction it came from.
What the bugle? Yes. It ended up.
Yeah.
I ended up finding the wallow that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
When I was pursuing this bugle.
Okay.
So
no, I wouldn't have said another word. I would have cut the distance. I would have tried to get within 100, 200 yards of that bugle before I called again.
Now, when you're cutting the distance, are you walking fast? Are you walking gingerly? Are you jogging?
I sound like a herd of elk headed for his. I'm going for his butt.
Okay.
Look at me. I can't sneak. I'm a perfect elk hunter. I sound like a herd of elk when I go through the forest.
Yeah. Okay.
See, everybody else is sneaking. The cougars are sneaking. The bears are sneaking. Everything else is sneaky. Don't sneak. Be elk. Be loud. Be cow call as you're walking. Break a twig. Thump a tree with your boot and just make it sound like a cow and a calf, and just keep walking for that bugle.
Okay. This is beautiful. So ended up not ever getting on elk. Found a broken 6-inch front tine from a big bull. Found a matching set of spike antlers, which was super cool. Found the wallow. Never saw the elk. Never heard from them ever again. That day went on. So we end up.
Sounds like tough hunting conditions.
Very tough. Now, granted, we got to remember when I said I saw that one cow, we were only 500 yards away from a hunting camp. So lots of people, lots
of pressure.
So we back out. We another day goes on, and I'm like, man, there's got to be elk back down in that one drainage from that very first morning where we heard a bugle. It could have been an elk, then it was humans, or however that scenario played out. So we get down there and we're uphill.
And just so you know, I don't care if I think it's a human. I'm calling it in. Number one, I'll get intel from whoever I call in. Number two, they'll figure out that there's guys on the mountain that sound just like elk, so that maybe they'll be a little more hesitant. So always, I don't care what they sound like, go to it, find out what it is.
Okay.
Because a lot of times it's an elk.
Huh. So
Always calming.
So do you think even though that they like stop bugling and then all of a sudden let out a cow call,
I don't care.
you don't
I want
care?
to know. I want them to know I'm in there.
Interesting. Okay.
I want them to know I'm. Look, every time you call, every time you bugle, my ass is going to show up.
I love it. So we get back uphill from this drainage, the bedding area that I said was just like hot. There was hair still on the trees, everything. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, good Lord, please. Like, I'm trying to also judge distance of bugles. Like, you hear a bugle, it's kind of like coyotes. It's deceptive. You hear a coyote, you're like, oh, dude, that's only just right over there. And it's a lot further away.
Mile away.
Yes. Yeah. And then I'm like, well, it can't be so far away that I can't hear them. Like, they have right. to be within my vocal distance as well if they're going to respond or whatever. So we're sitting there. And all of a sudden, we get a midday bugle roundup. This had to have been about 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It just in the timber. And I look at Tony, he looks at me, and we're like, let's go. And I just started sprinting down a hill on this little game trail that I've already hiked. And all of a sudden, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, I like hit the brakes, and I was like, I should probably start slowing down and creeping in here. I stopped, and I took a knee, and the bull at 30 yards walked broadside right in front of me. And I was like, oh, no way. I had an arrow knocked. I was ready to go. I'm ranging. Nothing but brush covering his vitals. And everything inside of me, like to this day, I'm like, should I have shot? Should I have shot? Should I? You'll get to see it on the episode. It's a quick clip that we show because it's so dark and dense. It doesn't show up very well. I did not I did not let that arrow go. I held on to it. And so.
Do you know why he walked in front of you?
No.
He was looking for those elk that he heard running off that hill. You were moving so fast, you weren't being quiet. He's looking for that elk coming off that hill.
Huh. Okay. So I get wind is in our face. It's perfect. We're sitting there. I'm looking around. How do I get this bull to come into me beyond this brush? He never did. And I, do I soft cow call? Do I just stay silent? What do I do at that point?
Absolutely. You have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose. Now, at that point, when I saw him walking, I would have taken my tube and I would have thrown my tube behind me so that the sound would have projected opposite of the way he's walking. So I want him to reverse that trend and come through that thick brush to give me a shot. So I'll take that tube, tuck it under my arm. 1, 2, 3, bam, done. All of a sudden he heard a cow, but you're not overdoing it. You're not overcalling, but you gave him a reason to turn and come back and maybe give you that shot. And by projecting that sound away from the way he's going to want to reverse that 180 and go see what that was.
Now
he wants to merge. The urge to merge with an elk is so great.
So you just did that cow call into a bugle tube facing behind you. Is that the same idea and concept of like cupping your mouth and putting your hands?
Yes. Absolutely.
Turning your head and just. Gotcha.
I mean, you can project that sound. Those sound waves are traveling and you can move. I can position elk as they're coming to me.
Okay. So
I can get them to go left. I can get them to go right.
I'm sitting there waiting. I'm waiting this elk out. I've made some cow calls, and I think I overcalled.
Okay.
But I say but because the bugle that I heard was a roundup bugle. It wasn't.
Right.
It wasn't that. Hey, ladies, where we at?
It was. Let's roll.
Yeah, it's let's roll. It's time to get out of here. He had 6 or 7 cows with them that were all within this little timber, and I somehow got in the middle of them, and I spooked one of the cows or something happened where the cow kind of got up quickly, and then the herd took off.
Hustled off.
Yeah.
No, they hustle. They don't know what you are. There's so many cougars, so many obviously harassing them. Everything's trying to eat them. Everything's sneaking. That's why I really think you got in the middle of them, because you weren't trying to sneak. You were just hauling ass.
Okay, so we chase this herd and this bull quite a ways. He's constantly stopping and looking back, but they're so fast compared to like what we're trying to do and all that
they can feed faster than you can hike.
Yeah. So I lost him. He got away. And that entire moment, I was like, dude, should I have shot? Should I have not? Like it was right there.
When you follow your heart, you're never wrong, Johnny.
Yeah. I felt good about not shooting, and
then you're never wrong.
So
don't second guess that ever.
Yeah. I appreciate that. So that was that experience. You're talking, it's really interesting what you shared at the beginning of this episode to now you're hearing this progression. We lose the elk. We're trying to trail them. I end up finding some other areas on the mountains that they have either gone or transitioned to and from or through. And I get down to the last morning of our hunt. And I was in the woods probably like 4 or 5 days. And getting ready to go out, Tony and Tony spills a pot of water, boiling hot water on his foot, and melted skin off his foot from the coffee that we were going to be making that morning. And so I'm like, no. So this is what you don't see in the episode. You'll see like there's a hard cut to there was no ending to our show because there was no ending to our show. It was the foot just
over.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm not gonna sit here. My flight's not till tomorrow, or my flight wasn't till the next day, but the tag ended. Like I flew out the day after my tag was over. So we're sitting there, and I'm like, I gotta just go, man. I have to go do this. And so I go and I take a hike into the woods to this one drainage that I haven't checked out yet. It was actually the drainage that was below where I saw the bull elk a couple days prior. So nice. I'm like, okay, we're in that transition. I hike in, I'm bugling, I'm cow calling. I don't hear anything. I get 0 responses. And then on my way out, I hiked in the dark, and on my way out, it was probably like 11 o'clock. No, like 10 o'clock. I rip off a bugle. I'm like, screw it, man. I got nothing to lose. I'm just going to rip a bugle. And a bull lights up what sounded like to me like 150 yards to my left. And
he's right there.
So I'm on like an old skid logging road. Open, a lot of crunchy like branches, thin timber, but then a steep hill. And on that steep hill is timber, and I don't see anything. He lit up right there. So I couldn't tell if he was at the top of the hill or midway. It sounded like he was right in front of me.
Just go.
So I froze at that point, and I was like, no freaking way that there's a bull right here. Because at this point, I was only like a few hundred yards from my truck that I parked. I was like, I hiked all the way in, and it's right here by the truck. So it bugles. I cut him off. He returns it, but nothing else is happening. So I'm waiting there. I'm positioning myself. Once again, I'm caught out in the open because his response to me wasn't when I expected an elk to respond at that distance. So I end up he goes silent. I work up the hill, and the hill had like a butt cheek to it where it went up, down, and then back up. I ran into a couple deer, and I got him to bugle a couple more times, but at that point, he sounded way far away.
When they're going away from you, it'll sound like they're a long ways away, and they can still be pretty close.
So at that point, I was like, okay, I got nothing to lose. And that elk I just never saw, never had any other interaction. That's not the end of the story, though, because I got more to tell you, but that was the end of my hunt. Is
Right.
the last day I had something light off at me, and it exchanged for a couple minutes, but then nothing. It just went silent, walked away. And I'm wondering if the wind was a little swirly, could have scented me, or it just straight spotted me out in the open when I bugled. So
it's a tough call. No, it sounds challenging. That hunt sounded very challenging from the pressure mainly. And just not only the cougars, but the people. And there's, hindsight's 2020, but not always. You don't know what you should have done in some of those situations. Would subtle calling have been better? Would more aggressive calling been better? Did you rake the trees? I found out sometimes when those elk like to hear the footfalls, I'm really loud walking. I'm breaking branches. I'm really, I go opposite. When everything else is sneaky, I go loud and obnoxious. I beat the trees with other, branches and stuff. I try to get louder, and I get success. I'm not looking for every elk to come to me, but I want one to come look at me that's a bull.
right,
So
right. I don't. Hey man, do you like blondes or brunettes? Blondes. Okay, good, because I'll take anything.
Yeah, no, we're not going to be picky.
No.
And
okay, so throughout the entire 5-day hunt, only that first night were elk bugling. The rest of the nights were clear, crystal, starry nights, and they were silent until the sun goes down on my hunt. And I'm like, all right, Tony, let's go drive into town, get some gas, and get some.
You heard elk everywhere.
Brother, I didn't hear elk everywhere. We're driving back up into the mountains, and I told Tony, I go, pull over right here. And I didn't have OnX on my phone or anything. I go, pull over. I put the window down, and it's pitch black. And I put the bugle out the car window, and I go, and halfway through my bugle, a bull cuts me off instantly, and it sounded like it was 30 yards from the truck. It was right there, to the point where I got actually scared. I felt like I was in the movie. Do you remember the original Jurassic Park where the velociraptor sticks out of the bushes? And it's like, I thought the elk was like going to charge the truck. That's how close you could feel the vibrations in it. And so I cut him off again, and he just ripped at me again and even closer. And I'm like, dude, the sun's down. The bow's right here. If he's at 10 yards in headlights, do I shoot him?
I'll get him.
Come on, man.
This little redneck from Washington will get her done.
So we end up bugling back and forth. I mean, the truck is still running. The truck was never turned off or anything. I didn't see him because it was pitch black, but I ended up looking at OnX, and there's a little bit of a bench right off the road, and no more than 40 yards that first bugle would have come from.
Well, that rut, it can be, the peak of it can vary from the 15th to the 25th, 30th. If you put a microphone out in the trees, around that 17th to the 20th will be the peak of the bugling, and then it tails off. And then the first week of October, there'll be another little peak of bugling. When the cows that are equivalent of a spike, they won't come into estrus till that first week of October. That was their year and a half old. So there's 2 peaks to the bugling that take place. And all we do is insert ourselves for 5 days. And those elk have kept that hide on for 365 days that year. You insert yourself for 5 days, and you think you're going to take it away from them.
Yeah.
It's not always that easy. And archery elk percentage, I mean, the best percentage you see typically is 11%.
Right.
I mean, on public land.
Right.
So, I mean, that's your odds. That's really what you're up against.
Can I just
Now,
tell
I'm lucky. I've put my knife in 36 bulls that I've shot with a bow.
man,
So I'm 57. So that's pretty good.
I got a late start, so I can actually
Yeah.
count on one hand the number of times I've archery elk hunted.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this. My first time, I shot a bull. My second time, I shot a cow. So I was 2 for 2 on archery elk
Nice.
hunts. My third time, I wasn't the shooter, but we got on a bull and Tony ended up missing. And my fourth time was this experience. So
Right.
I've gotten on elk every hunt. So I like that.
That's awesome.
It's like, okay,
That's
baby.
awesome. No, and it's got you. You got the fever. That's for sure.
And then I went and
Yeah,
moved to Texas, and I got to figure out how to hunt elk again.
Well, we're running long. Do you want me to run through some calls that I find really successful for me?
Yeah, absolutely.
So everyone should learn to use a diaphragm. Hands-free, you can draw. You can have your bow at full draw on. Make that stop that bull. We all want that standing broadside shot. But if you'll remember, cows and calves, every bull, I don't care whether he's 400 inches. The biggest bull I've ever called in was 421 and change. He netted 411 and 3/8. Would have been the archery world record if my buddy would have shot him at 35 yards when he first came broadside. But he asked me how big he was, and he's sitting there with his rangefinder. Tyler Flynn, if you're listening, this is you, buddy. Tyler Flynn used to be the hunting manager of the Reno Sportsman's Warehouse, and he drew the only non-resident archery tag on Pavant. And I called in the Jacobson bull. He was 421 and change, netted 411 and 3/8. If his rangefinder would have worked and he wouldn't have looked at me and said, "How big is he?" He's a 411-inch bull. And if you got to ask how big he is, he was a novice too. He didn't know what was in front of us. I said, it's the biggest elk I've ever called in, and it's still the biggest elk I've ever. I shouldn't say that. I called a 444 bull in Pennsylvania on Sunday. When they wouldn't allow Sunday hunting, but we went out to video, and we put a 444 bull on video.
Oh.
And he come right up to me. And it's on that video. If you go to Pennsylvania and look up the draw Pennsylvania elk, you can watch the hunt I'm referencing. But I call all elk. Every elk was a calf. And so every elk does a. They can be the calf, and then the cow always answers them.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do to kill elk. If you would just go out there and sound like a cow and a calf, communicating with each other. Now, once September 15th rolls around, these cows will start what I call estrus buzz, whatever you want to do it. And so don't be afraid to do the cow-calf, the estrus buzz, and then I always try to sound like a small bull with a cow in estrus. And if you can just do that, I can do it without a tube. I do it with just sound like a small bull that's tending a cow in estrus. And I really do the estrus with an open reed call. This is an old sky oak. Now I can clean it up and be the cow-calf. But if I buzz that. Now, if I can't get a bull to bugle at a bugle, I do what I call my locating cow call, which is an obnoxious. You've never heard an elk do this, but I can get bulls to bugle. And when a bull's walking away from me, sometimes I can go. Man, if I do that in a canyon, every bull turns and goes, bah. And I think I'm just saying, I love you. And they're saying, I love you too. And that's all they're saying. Now, if there's big bulls in the area, I will be a big bull. I will do all the. Put that through the tube.
That's what gives
that buzz bugle.
that growling sound.
Yeah, it's just buzzing my lips with the call emitting that sound. And so learn to buzz bugle in the big areas. You'll see the guys in Arizona hunting the big bulls. Here in Utah, the 380s, the 350s, the 360s. Sometimes you got to fight because they're there to fight. They got the wife beaters on. You better be up to the task to be the wife beater. The silk shirt guys, they want the pretty little. And then you got the guys in the corner. They'll come to all of it. And so you really have the advantage of the hunters. You can do all those calls, the cow-calf, the bull, day in, day out. 95% of the bulls I call in probably came to the cow call. But I got to get that 5, maybe 10% of them that want to fight, and they'll come to a bugle. And the big bulls, man, when you buzz at them and you get in close and you buzz at his girls, that would be like me being across the street looking at your wife saying, "Hey, baby,"
Just,
yeah, you're going to be like, "What the hell did you just say, pal?" And that's, so you've got to be able, you don't have to be a world champion. Got 5 third place finishes in the world elk calling championships, 5 second place finishes. And in, 1996, I believe it was, I won the world elk calling championships when it was in Fort Worth, Texas, when the Elk Foundation did their first expo down there in Fort Worth. And man, it's just, you don't have to be a world champion caller. Get you a good diaphragm. The Fox Pro, we're making some really great diaphragms. Wayne Carlton taught me how to use a diaphragm 40 years ago. And his son, Mark Carlton, native by Carlton, they're making some of the best elk calls on the planet right now. His bugle tube, his V3 diaphragm, all the contests I've won. I won the first 2 years of the Western Hunting Conservation Expo. I won the first 2 years of that. I won the world. I won the Best of the West elk calling contest 6 or 7 times. Won the Eastern U.S. Championship. Won it 4 or 5 times. I've won a lot of elk calling contests. Calling to humans is a lot harder than calling to elk. You can make mistakes with elk, but if you'll just learn to make a few of those sounds with the open reed calls and the diaphragm, you're going to be more successful in the field. You've got to be. And just watch us on video. Watch what we do, and you can go online. You can go to the elk calling contests. Bo Brooks has won the World Elk Calling Championship the last 2 years. There should be some audio of him calling. Sound like him, sound like me. And learn more and get more experience. And nothing beats experience in the field, does it?
No, nothing. And I'll tell you, going through the scenario with you,
yeah,
it's like a football player coming to the sideline after he throws a pick or gets stalled out on 4th down. All right, coach, what could I have done better? You're like, well, let's work through this. It's like, okay, I see. I'm ready to get back out there. Let's go.
Yeah, no, you have a talent for it. You have a passion for it, and that's all a guy needs. Now you just need more tags and more time.
Yes.
And the tags and the time are hard to come by. So when you do get that tag, maximize your potential. Spend more, maximize the days of field. If I had that tag, and see, that's so hard with a family, and you got to pay bills and everything else. But I would have liked to have been there 3 or 4 days before the hunt. Really find those wallows and find those places. And then when I actually when the tag's open and I'm not spending my time looking for elk, I'm spending my time hunting elk. And that's all a guy needs to understand.
That's a very powerful statement right there. That is huge. That might be the title of the show. Who knows? I love it. Brother, thank you so much. Truly, I can't wait to give you a big hug in February when I come down to the expo and
Western Hunting Conservation Expo. Everybody ought to be to the expo. They might draw that tag of a lifetime. $5. You put $5 in, your name goes in the hat. Somebody's going to draw that tag. Why can't it be you, Johnny Mac?
I'm drawing it. It's happening, and I want to hunt it with you.
Hey, and let's make something. Let's get that done because I can. 40 years of elk calling. This September will be my 40th year with one of these diaphragms in my mouth, and I'm just telling you, I've forgotten more than I remember now. My memory is getting that bad, and I really, Johnny, you don't know how impressed I am from the kid I met a few years ago to where you are now. You've come a long way, brother, and you're one of my soul brothers. You're a patriot, and God bless you, man.
I really appreciate that. It means a lot. Thank you, brother. I'm honored, humbled, and it's just so much fun being in a community with you where, as I was getting into hunting, your shows was all I was watching. I was like, oh man, dude, like, give me more. To now, here I am.
That's awesome.
Getting coached up.
No, and we've introduced you to some people, and now they're helping you on this road. So that's how it works, brother.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing.
Huxwrx. I see the hat on your head.
Yeah.
These boys in Salt Lake are making the Huxwrx suppressors. If you ain't shooting a Huxwrx, did you see that Pew Science article on the new Flow Titanium 762? The best hunting suppressor ever made. Now, Silencer Co. just came out with a 7-ounce. This Huxwrx is 11 ounces, but it won't shoot on a gas gun like this Huxwrx will. So, I mean, and Pew Science just put it against that Sandman suppressor, and it performs as well as that Sandman, but on an AR platform, it exceeds it. So, you know, Huxwrx, Jana Waller, Skullbound, all our friends in the community that have, you know, you're doing great things, brother, and I'm glad you are.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. What's on the future for you?
You know, we got to go filming here the 1st of September. We're going to make a Fox Pro Hunting TV, and then we're doing Fur Taker Resurrection series. We're going to have a series of Fur Taker episodes. We're going to kind of Fur Taker Resurrection. So I've already filmed one of those, and we're still cooking with gas. And then September 13th, we're going to be chasing elk, brother.
Oh man. Well, so the Soul Seekers crew, Tony and Will, are actually coming. They're leaving Saturday to drive down to Utah.
Saturday the 19th. Me and Amy, we've got deer tags on the manti, and we got our spike cow tags.
Oh, sweet. So Jake is helping us out. He pulled up a trailer, excellent. And I was like, I couldn't make the trip this year. I have to figure out a way to come hunt. It's killing me. I've
quit a few jobs just so I could make an elk hunt. So remember that.
And
so my son, get this. My son got a call on Friday. A guy turns a mountain goat tag in, says, "You're next in line. Do you want it?"
No way.
He called him Monday morning. He's got a goat tag on the Uintas.
Wow.
Once in a lifetime tag, and he's got it.
What time of year is that? Is that an October hunt?
September to October.
Ooh, beautiful. Are you going with them?
Yes. Yeah. We gotta make some time for that. That's a once in a lifetime. So
I love it. Well, I don't want to take up too much more time. Thank you so much, Big Al. You're a stud. I really appreciate it. Everybody, when this podcast goes out, make sure to go check out and vote for Fox Pro Hunting Show on Carbon TV for best
small game, and vote for Soul Seekers on the best open.
That's right, brother. You know it. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to know more about elk hunting and any of the questions that you might have wanted to ask during this Instagram Live that never took place, shoot us a message. Sign up for our newsletter. Go to soulseekersnation.com. Sign up to the newsletter. You'll get all the information of current stuff we're putting out, or shoot us a DM on social medias. Big Al, I'm honored to have you on here, brother. Thank you so much. You said you're still cooking with gas, and I hope you always do, because Lord knows that there's people trying to take that away from us right now.
Yeah, no. We'll just smash them too.
That's right, baby. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to support the show, go check out our discount codes on our website through our partners. Also, go pick yourself up a Soul Seekers hat, shirt, sticker, all that. Be blessed, freedom on, and as always, stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast and want to support the show, you can always like, share, subscribe, and leave a rating, as it helps us share our mission of mentorship is conservation. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of Soul Seekers Nation as we transform lives through primal adventure. If you want to get more connected with the podcast, check out the Soul Seekers Nation Facebook group, as I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. So stay tuned. and stay soulful.